Samuel Johnson defined a lexicographer as a maker of dictionaries, a harmless drudge. Well, I'm sitting here with a lexicographer who is not a harmless drudge, Julie Kleeman. Thank you very much for appearing on Danwei TV. Julie is the chief English editor of this book, the Oxford Chinese Dictionary. It's English-Chinese and Chinese-English. It's brand new, and it's the result of many years of work. Julie, why a dictionary now? How did the project start, and why is it necessary to make a new dictionary?
Well, I think from OUP's side, they recognised a very long time ago that Chinese was really the important emerging language, and they hadn't produced a dictionary from Oxford for Chinese ever before. So the plans had been in the pipeline for some time to produce a major English-Chinese, Chinese-English dictionary, the likes of which no other international publisher had ever produced before. And I think they started work in 2004 on this one, so it's been 6 years in the making. And why? Because no other dictionary of this kind existed before, even though you'll go into shops here in China and see any number of English-Chinese or Chinese-English dictionaries, you won't get a single volume bilingual English-Chinese dictionary. And certainly not of this size, scope, ambition.
Julie, when I think of a lexicographer, I tend to think of kind of like an old lady. You seem very young to be a chief editor of a dictionary. How did you get this gig?
Well, I've been working on dictionaries for about 8 years. I worked previously on HarperCollins' English-Chinese dictionary, which HarperCollins were the first international publisher to make that foray into Chinese dictionaries. But we produced a pocket dictionary and a student's dictionary and various kind of small Chinese dictionaries from that first title. After that, I worked for Larousse on phrase books.
This is a very big book with a lot of stuff in it. How does the work actually happen? How do you actually make a dictionary?
What I do know is that we had very good project managers based, one of them based in the UK in Oxford and one of them based in Hong Kong. And according to who your boss was, and my boss was in the UK, I basically was assigned work by him, which tended to be a batch of words. And I think, my first engagement on the project would have just looked like that, a batch of words to look through. As editor, my job was to check the translations either into Chinese to make sure that the translations into Chinese had accurately reflected the sense of the English, or on the Chinese-English side to check that the English had been translated in idiomatic and useful ways. Once I was happy with a batch of words, I would send that back to my boss. And that happened on this dictionary using very sophisticated and brand new dictionary writing software that enabled translators and editors to be based actually anywhere in the world. So even though my boss was in Oxford and the other project manager was based in Hong Kong, editors and translations were physically based between UK, Hong Kong, China, US, sometimes Thailand on this project, because we were working on using a system with a central server in Oxford that enabled us to download those batches, and then once we were happy with them, to upload them again to a central server and make them accessible to editors who were anywhere and everywhere.
So why are there so few Chinese-English, English-Chinese dictionaries?
Because of the difference between the two languages. It's the two languages are so vastly different, and the problem with existing Chinese-English, English-Chinese dictionaries is that they have tended to be developed here in China with only native Chinese speakers, and thus English, as it's presented in those dictionaries, is not really English as you and I know it. So the challenge is in getting a team of people who are both native English speakers and native Chinese speakers to work together and to be able to agree on translations of terms, and particularly when it comes to Chinyu or idioms, that are sometimes very difficult to translate because they have historical references or kind of cultural references that in the other language, simply don't exist.
Where does the basic stock of words come from?
Well, on the English-Chinese side, the word list and example list roughly came out of OUP's most recent English to French dictionary. but obviously with those translations stripped out and that framework modified to suit our purposes with Chinese. On the other side, as you'll see, this is a co-publication OUP with FLTRP, Huayanshe, here in Beijing. And they gave us a lot of help in terms of choosing the Chinese words. We loosely worked with an existing Chinese dictionary that they had published, but there was an awful lot of work done to strip down the choice of words in that dictionary, which in itself was 2,000 pages long, and to add more words that maybe hadn't been in that edition.
So what about new words? How are new words chosen?
Well, across a range of areas, really. I mean, there are new words in the field of the environment. For example, boyun, cloud seeding, or popular words in use like shanzhai, which means like loosely knock off. I think that's how we translated it. Also in the field of sports, or say terrorism, we've got suicide bomber in there, 自杀性爆炸, I think that is. So we had to update with words that are in popular use now that may not have been in popular use in years gone by.
And what about dirty words?
Yeah, well, that's a question everybody always asks me.
I didn't even have to ask you.
I made it a priority to ensure that at least on the Chinese side, that some of the dirty words that had never featured in dictionaries before were in our dictionary, to satisfy people like you who asked that question. So for the first time, I think you've got words like niubi and other filthier Chinese words that never appeared in such a formal-looking dictionary in the past, that previously you may only have been able to find online, for example.
So is there going to be a digital or an internet version of this dictionary?
There definitely will be. At the time of this launch, that product is not ready yet, but it's in development, careful development, to make sure that it works in the best possible way.
And so you do already, if you buy this, you get access to...
That's right, a year's access
to
the existing OUP Chinese-English, English-Chinese dictionary. Yeah.
And is that the same one as that little red book?
That's the one.
The little red book Chinese dictionary. So that's online.
That's online already, yeah. Mm. But in the future, when this version is out, you'll be able to purchase an online version or a version for your Palm Pilot or iPhone without actually purchasing the paper edition. It will cost the same amount. But if you buy the dictionary, then you'll get that automatically anyway. As I was working on this dictionary, I very rarely looked in my huge stack of print dictionaries. So I mean, personally, I tend to use electronic dictionaries, and I would imagine that other people will tend to do the same. But I do think that there's something missed in that experience that you cannot substitute for the experience of leafing through a dictionary and maybe stumbling across something that you weren't looking up, that teaches you something you didn't even know you wanted to know. So I mean, I think there'll always be a market for a print dictionary in that sense, that there are some people who love the paper, and who love the experience of stumbling across those things. And for example, in this dictionary, we've also got quite a lot of cultural notes and usage notes that break up the text, that give you additional information around a word or around some tricky area. And again, you don't get that on electronic dictionaries. So, I think that adds to the experience.
So you've just finished this project. What's next for you, Julie?
There'll be more.
Another dictionary?
There'll be more. I mean, there's been such a huge investment in this dictionary on OUP's side, and so they want to, from this one, produce a number of spin-offs, a pocket or a concise dictionary, or actually I think at the moment they're looking into probably coming out with something that fits somewhere in between. And for me, I mean, they'll still need editorial assistance with that, because that won't just be a question of selecting which words they want to retain for smaller versions of the dictionary, but there'll also be work around reducing those entries to make sure that there's not too much information in them, or if they're catering to a specific audience, if it's a student's dictionary, for example, that there are maybe more examples. So there'll still be quite a lot of tinkering to be done with the text over probably many different versions of this dictionary for many years to come. Hopefully.
Well, good. So, Julie Kleeman, editor of this tome, thank you very much for appearing on Danwei TV.
Thanks very much, Julie.
Thank you.